The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. My name is John Michael Cortez, and I'm the Community Involvement Manager with Capital Metro, which, of course, Capital Metro is a member of the Project Connect team and partnership. And I'm joined here today by Mr. Kyle Cahey, who is our Urban Rail and Central Corridor project lead or program lead. And today we're going to have a quick webinar to talk about the work plan for the Central Corridor study and how it all fits into the larger Project Connect vision. And really appreciate you taking the time to learn more about it. So with that, we're going to jump right in. And here's the agenda for the webinar today. We're going to cover briefly Project Connect and the larger regional vision. And then I'm going to turn it over to Kyle, and he's going to talk about the Central Corridor work plan and schedule and public involvement, some of the folks we also have advising us, what the Central Corridor study area actually is, and then, of course, some of the next steps. And then we'll turn it over to you. If you happen to have a few questions or concerns you'd like to raise, we'll try to answer those just as soon as we can after the presentation has concluded. Okay? Well, with that, let's jump right in. So why have Capital Metro, the City of Austin, the Lone Star Rail District, the Metropolitan Planning Organization, CAMPO, and a number of other Central Texas transportation agencies and counties and municipalities, why have we all come together on this effort called Project Connect? Well, the reason is because we have some pretty significant regional challenges that we need to address. Actually, we've needed to address for a long time. And I think we would all, those of you who are listening or watching this online, would agree that we're all pretty fortunate to live in Central Texas these days. We have a tremendous quality of life, wonderful institutions of higher education, great medical facilities, great parks and natural resources. We have all these things that contribute to quality of life. And on top of all of that, we have an economy that's, quite frankly, the envy of the rest of the country. We're doing very, very well here. The problem is that everybody else in the world has figured that out too, and people just keep moving here. There's all sorts of estimates out there, but the one that we use a lot is that every day there's about 150 people arriving in Central Texas, 150 new Central Texans every day. That's incredible. And that's a bunch of course, new cars on our roads in our road network here in Central Texas. And with that kind of growth, it does bring about a lot of opportunities for business and for all of our institutions, but it also brings, of course, some challenges we need to address as a region. And these 5 you see on the screen before you are the ones that we're focused on, the partnership that is Project Connect. We can't solve all the region's problems, but we want to tackle these 5. One is centers. Many of you may know that our Metropolitan Planning Organization adopted as part of its long-range plan for the growth of our community, this concept where we would try to capture as much of our future growth as possible in what are called activity centers. These communities where you can meet most of your daily needs without leaving that activity center. You can work there, you can live there, you can shop there, go to school there, recreate there. You can do all the things you need to do within that activity center. And there's lots of different kinds of activity centers. You have the biggest activity center in the region, of course, is the area in and around downtown Austin. But then you have smaller activity centers like downtown Round Rock or Buda or Kyle or Elgin, that have been around for a long time as activity centers, but on a smaller scale. You also have activity centers that are just emerging. The Mueller redevelopment is an emerging activity center. The North University Boulevard area up in Round Rock is an exploding activity center that really didn't exist 10 years ago, but that has a lot of growth and growth potential. So we have all these activity centers that we want to develop over time where you can meet a lot of your needs, but let's be realistic. At some point, you're going to want to leave downtown Lockhart for something. You're going to want to leave downtown Austin for something. You're either going to work in another center or there's things you need to do in other centers. So the challenge that we're trying to address through Project Connect is connecting these centers together. In addition, we have the core of our region, which is the area in and around downtown Austin. We also have the challenge of connecting all these activity centers to the core of our region. There's great things happening in and around all the activity centers in our 5, now 6-county area. There's people making computers up in Round Rock. There's people cooking barbecue in Lockhart. teaching courses down in San Marcos at Texas State. There's all sorts of jobs, thousands and thousands of jobs and economic activity throughout the region. But the core of our region, the area in and around downtown Austin, has something like between 1 out of 4 and 1 out of 3 of all the jobs in the region are in those few zip codes around downtown Austin. It's really the hub of economic and cultural activity in our region. And this is evident. You know, just think about traffic. Where is the traffic awful every day? It's getting in and out of the core of our region, downtown Austin. It's really not that big of a challenge getting from Leander to Round Rock or Lockhart to Kyle. It's really going in and out of the core that's the big challenge. So we have those challenges that we're trying to address of connecting the centers and connecting them to the core. But we have constraints. Gone are the days where we can just widen out highways into infinity. What you have there, it's a little difficult to see there, is an aerial of IH-35 through downtown Austin. To really accommodate the demand that exists for IH-35 traffic, I mean, you'd have to build something like the Katy Freeway through downtown Austin. You know, something with 10, 20 lanes. Well, we just don't have the space. What are you going to tear down along I-35 to actually be able to accommodate something like that? We really do have some pretty significant constraints. And with that, the direction that kind of guides us in is we have to look at alternatives like high-capacity transit. And then, of course, congestion. We really want to focus on providing attractive options to sitting in congestion, and then growth. As incredible as our growth is today, and we are one of, if not the fastest growing regions in the country, our rate of growth is projected to get even faster over time. So all of these challenges that we face, the ones you see before you here, and then others we're not trying to address through Project Connect, like water availability and higher education and workforce development, other regional challenges, they're all just going to get worse faster if we don't really come together as a region and start to address them at a regional scale. And so this is why Project Connect got together. These are the challenges we're trying to address. And over the last couple of years, working with all of our partners, working with the public, we've identified solutions. This is the vision that we've developed to try to address what you saw on the previous slide of those regional challenges, to connect the centers, connect them to the core with high-quality alternatives, provide options to congestion, and to help us deal with the challenges that come with growth. And so we use all the tools in the high-capacity transit toolbox. And Kyle will talk a little bit about what high-capacity transit is, but we're not talking about local buses. We're talking about the big stuff, the kinds of transit that move a lot of people very quickly, very reliably, and are designed to be as congestion-proof as practical in and around the region. And so we use all those tools to try to come up, to try to connect Central Texas with this vision that you see on the screen. And you can actually download a larger, full version of this on our website, projectconnect.com. The great thing about this vision, because we've all seen pretty maps and plans that maybe haven't ever really come to fruition, I think the best news about what's going on with Project Connect is that this stuff is really happening. It's moving forward. This diagram kind of shows you where we are with some of the pieces of this vision. What we have in place right now is a great metro rail service from Leander to downtown Austin. It's our commuter rail service that's operating very successfully. Ridership has tripled, more than tripled, excuse me, since that service started. Those of you who've had an occasion to ride it know that at the peak hour, rush hour in the mornings and afternoons, it's standing room only going in and out of downtown. We're having some real capacity challenges with that particular service at this time. And we know we need to make improvements and increase capacity. We've known that for some time. But we were kind of worried, how are we going to pay for that? Well, Capital Metro was very fortunate that we were just awarded a very competitive grant from the FTA of about $1 million to be able to address some of those capacity and operational challenges we're facing on Metro Rail. So, but we have a successful piece of the vision in place now, and it's only going to get better. In addition, coming soon, that means funded and under construction, we have our first 2 Metro Rapid lines, which is our premium high-capacity transit, our bus rapid transit service that will be operating on 4 of the busiest corridors in our region, North Lamar, South Congress, and Burnett Road in South Lamar, with an amazing service that is going to be very successful from the get-go, we think. Also under construction, express lanes on MOPAC. Those we're hoping will be operational by 2015. We'll be running high-capacity transit in those express lanes that the Mobility Authority has under construction right now. So those next 2 pieces will be here before you know it. And now the next steps. What are the next projects? We have three that are moving forward. We have, of course, the Lone Star Rail project, which is an interregional commuter rail that connects Georgetown all the way down to San Antonio and ties into their system down there. That project is moving forward. They're in a couple of environmental analyses to make that project move forward. And now what we're here to talk about today is, it says urban rail, but it's really the Central Corridor study. The City of Austin has been advancing an urban rail project for the last couple of years, and our partners, now that we have this long-range vision, are kind of taking a step back to make sure we're still headed in the right direction with this Central Corridor study. Capital Metro is also advancing simultaneously the North Corridor study, which is looking at what is the right set of projects and solutions to connect Georgetown, Hutto, Round Rock, Pflugerville into Central Austin. Connect those activity centers together and, again, connect them to the core. But right now our focus is on the Central Corridor study. We'll get to other corridors in the region over time, but this is the one that we're focused on today. And right here what you see is a pretty simplified diagram of the process from taking this vision that is Project Connect and delivering pieces of this vision towards the eventual realization of the entire system. We start with, of course, with our regional plan. That's the Campo 2035 plan that I mentioned, which has the centers concept as a part of that, but also includes major roadway projects, bicycle, pedestrian projects, and then also, of course, high-capacity transit. Project Connect is the system plan, the plan for the system that connects the entire region together, and we talked about that. Next comes the corridor studies, where you break off chunks of that vision and identify what is the actual project that you'll be advancing forward to make that vision happen. The Central Corridor and the North Corridor are at that stage now. Once you get through that corridor studies, then you actually have a real project, what's called the locally preferred alternative, which Kyle will talk about here shortly. Once you've identified that, then you can get into your project development, which includes your preliminary engineering and some of your environmental studies to take the project to a further level of detail. And then hopefully, once you get through that, if you've got the money, then you build it, like we're building Metro Rapid right now. And then once you're done with that, of course, then you get to operate it like we're doing with Metro Rail, and people can enjoy it, and you have another piece of the vision in place. So what we're trying to do is move pieces of that vision, projects, down this planning process. So that was a very quick overview of Project Connect. And so what we're going to talk about now is the process to identify the next piece that we will be implementing as part of the Project Connect vision. And I'm going to turn it over to Kyle to talk about the Central Corridor work plan and schedule.
Thank you, John Michael. Appreciate everyone's participation today. What John Michael just described as Project Connect is a vital aspect of what we are doing on the Central Corridor. It represents the foundation that the Central Corridor is based on. And we'll talk a little bit more about how the Central Corridor relates to various corridors established in the Project Connect project as we move forward. I want to talk a little bit today about our project moving forward. We've been in the process over the last several months of defining the work plan and schedule for our efforts, and I'll present that to you today. And then we'll talk a little bit more about some of our public involvement activities moving forward that John Michael will be leading. And then we'll talk briefly about some of our early efforts to define some of the challenges and opportunities that we anticipate moving forward with. What I want to talk about, our focus of our work plan was to address, as John Michael aptly focused us, on high-capacity transit. The local bus network in the region is a very fundamental aspect of being able to move people throughout the area, but we are looking at moving large numbers of people in very reliable trip times so that it becomes an effective alternative for people that need to have mobility in the region. Our work plan has also been focused on establishing a very effective decision-making process, and one that's transparent and very open so that everyone can support the decision-making process going forward. The idea is also this is sequential. There is a sequence, there's a logic that goes to our decision-making. We want to make sure that that element is addressed. And from my perspective, we need to be very efficient with our resources and very efficient with our time We are moving very quickly through a lot of this process, and so we definitely want to be focused on that aspect of making decisions quickly, but it has to be done in a very inclusive fashion. So as we work through our work plan, and I have some graphics that I'll share with you in just a couple of slides, but there are two major phases that we have established through our decision-making process. The first phase is to select what I've termed a priority subcorridor, and I'll have some graphics that support that. But the question is, which point in the compass are we going? Are we going to head to the northeast toward the Mueller development? Are we going to go northwest up Lamar? Are we going to go south down South Congress? We need to make a very efficient decision about which direction gives us the greatest opportunity to move forward with first. There will be some sequencing that will be involved, but we need to start in some direction, and that's what phase one will address. Once we've established that priority subcorridor, then we want to start looking at specific alignments. And the result of that analysis in phase two would identify a locally preferred alternative that would be advanced to a project development process. Each one of these phases is going to go through what I call a funnel approach. And the idea is that we start with a broad context discussion. We identify challenges and problems. We define alternative solutions. We evaluate those alternative solutions. And ultimately, we want to make a selection. So in phase one and phase two, we have a selection of a priority subcorridor and the selection of a locally preferred alternative, respectively. What I've thrown up here, and you can look at this a little bit more detailed on your screen, this is how we've outlined a number of steps or tasks to be able to accomplish the two phases of this effort. What I wanted to focus on here is that we are already making progress on the first 6 of our tasks in phase one. We have been doing work. You'll see a couple of blue boxes for some of the months and some of the green boxes. The blue boxes represent the project team's efforts. The green boxes represent the public involvement presentation of that information. So as you can see from this graphic, tasks 2 through 6 we've been working on in the months of July and August, and we're preparing to present that information to the public through a series of workshops and other briefings later this month in September. We have a number of evaluation efforts that will continue into the September and October timeframe, and ultimately the red asterisk at the bottom of this page represents the time frame during which we would seek a recommendation from various entities and action by the City of Austin Council and the Capital Metro Board of Directors. That decision would establish that priority subcorridor or that direction that we would orient our efforts on in phase two. In phase two, as I mentioned previously, this is where we start to dig into some of the specific alignments within the priority subcorridor. This is where we look at specific streets for the investment alternatives. We evaluate the modes, whether it's a bus rapid transit investment or if it's an urban rail, a light rail type of an investment. We will have a lot of alignment alternatives that we'll present in a preliminary fashion and then receive input and then bring back for a final discussion. Our objective in this phase of our work plan is that by June of next year, we would be able to move that forward into a recommendation phase and an action phase by, again, the City of Austin City Council, as well as the Capital Metro Board of Directors, and Lone Star, I might add. I failed to mention Lone Star as our partner, of course, through all of this. So that kind of wraps up a little bit, very quick overview of our work plan and the tasks that are moving forward. I will summarize that beginning at the end of September, we will start to have a lot of information that's starting to flow, and we look forward to enhancing this presentation with a lot more information that will help us in making decisions moving forward. I wanted to turn our attention to public involvement because a lot of our work is for naught if we don't have an effective outreach and input mechanism to be able to provide information and to seek input as we move forward. A lot of times, as I say, there's a lot of great projects that are sitting on shelves gathering dust because they have not been able to effectively address the public involvement aspect of the project. And this has been a criticism that we've had previously, and we are addressing that. We have basically approached the public involvement aspects from an informed consent perspective, which is a pretty high bar. We want to make sure that we provide input and we provide information so that it can be digested and that input can be provided as well. We also want to do this in a very meaningful way so that we can build and maintain trust. And the important thing for me as the program manager here is making sure that we've integrated this with the work plan. And so as you saw on the previous work plan slides where we had the blue and green boxes, every one of our public involvement outreaches are very much related to the work efforts that we have moving forward. We have a number of highlights from our public involvement plan I wanted to briefly provide to you. You can see in front of you on the slide that we anticipate having a series of public workshops. These are working sessions that we would be conducting on several venues every 2 months. And then we are also briefing the council and the council committees every 2 months, and sometimes even more frequent than that. Along that line, the Capital Metro Board has asked to be briefed every month, and we are doing that at their monthly meeting. We're also briefing the City Planning Commission and the Urban Transportation Commission every 2 months. In fact, last night I met with the UTC, and we decided that we would probably brief them on a monthly basis so that they could fulfill their mission in providing input to the City Council on the anticipated activities. And then we will have a very robust engagement online efforts such as this webinar and other efforts through our website at projectconnect.com. And I know John Michael continues to make lots and lots of neighborhood and community group meetings, and I attend as I'm able to as well. Specifically in the month of September, as I mentioned, we're reaching kind of our first opportunity to roll out this information. We have 4 public workshops that are scheduled at the end of this month. You see an acronym here, the CCAG. That is our Central Corridor Advisory Group that has been established. This is building on the successful Transit Working Group, the committee that was formed by Campo as they went through the Project Connect process. We've already had 2 meetings with the CCAG. I'll talk a little bit about that a little bit further in my briefing. We anticipate meeting with them again on September 20th, where we would start rolling this information out prior to the public workshops during the last week of the month. We also have a number of other briefings, as you can see, mentioned here and continue a lot of our efforts. This webinar is a key aspect, and we'll have several more of these as we move through the process. Let me just briefly describe to you with a Central Corridor Advisory Group that I mentioned on the prior slide. Again, building on the success that we had with the Transit Working Group, Mayor Leffingwell will chair this advisory group as well. We also have 16 other members that we have drawn from. It represents a diverse interest area. As you can see, it includes some folks that have had some experience during Project Connect, working on the Transit Working Group. We also have representation on the North Corridor Advisory Group that is moving forward in its corridor study. And we have a number of other stakeholders that represent a broad interest group from businesses, education, chambers of commerce, as well as general citizens. We do meet monthly with them, and there will be times when we will meet more frequently than that in order to advance the decisions that need to be made. But that is our active schedule that we have for the CCAG. We've developed a charge or a mission for the CCAG. And this is an important advisory group to me as I work with them to move forward with this. Number one, they will essentially ensure that we do have an open and transparent public process. They're going to hold our team's feet to the fire to make sure that the information we present is produced in an effective and efficient fashion to the broader general public. They'll also be a key advisor not only to the mayor but also to the project team as we make the 2 decisions that we need to make about prioritizing and defining the preferred alignment for our next high-capacity transit investment in the Central Corridor. And they're not just going to be attending meetings. We anticipate that we will be using them to help us in conducting dialogue with the community. So when we have our round of public workshops, we will be actively encouraging them to join us and to involve themselves in the process to communicate with the public on this effort. Now I want to take just a little bit to give you a little bit of a picture, kind of peek under the hood about where we are. Excuse me. One of the key things that we are doing that you saw from our work plan is being able to define the study area, define the central corridor. And the graphic that you see presented in front of you right now is the identification of the corridors in the Project Connect study. And you can see there's a couple that are phased, kind of grayed back a little bit, and then there's a light green, couple of light green corridors and a couple of dark green corridors. What these represent are 9 total Project Connect corridors, 1 in the center, which is the central corridor, and then 8 radial corridors that pretty much emanate out of the center. And many of the paths in this plan do come to the central corridor, and that's going to be one of our challenges, is to address how all of this is woven together. There were 5 high priority corridors that were identified, and the green colors designate that. The north and the central corridor were identified as the highest priority corridors, and that is why we are moving forward with the north corridor study and the central corridor study at this time. The secondary priority, if you will, are the northwest, southwest, and east corridors, and those will be subject to additional corridor studies in the future. So one of our challenges is to identify the limits or the study area for the central corridor. This was initially identified by Project Connect, and on the previous slide, as you saw, there was a general identification of what the central corridor, how it relates to the vision map that I have drawn here. And what I've just popped in here is kind of a fuzzy definition of the central corridor that was informed by the Project Connect effort. The project team right now, and I just came from a workshop where we actually reviewed and refined this effort. We are making some slight adjustments to the definition as we continue to put this corridor under a little stronger magnifying glass to be able to understand how the central corridor relates with all of the other corridors moving forward. But one of the key things that we've wanted to look at and what the central corridor study is focused on is identifying some of the sub-corridors that come into and relate to the central corridor. What I've thrown up on the screen here for you to look at is the urban rail layer that is contained in the Project Connect plan. And so we've basically just highlighted or bolded those urban rail lines that show up on the Project Connect map. This is an in-progress effort, and we're continuing to refine this, but let me show what this actually, how these lines relate to the central corridor. And the idea is now that we understand what the central corridor definition is we're starting to refine that a little bit more, then the question that we're asking ourselves, and we will seek input from you, is how do these urban rail lines relate to the central corridor? One of the key things that we've been asked to do, and we fully agree, is to provide essentially a side-by-side comparison of information that's going to drive our decision making on what is the next best investment or the first investment to make on this urban rail layer. So for example, you see an alignment that runs kind of due north along Lamar. That will provide information on that alignment. We'll also do compare that against all of the other 5 sub-corridors that are identified here. And so the idea is that by November we'll have enough information that we'll be able to present to the public as well as the advisory group that will allow them to discern the recommendation for which point of the compass we are going to start focusing our attention on. This is all very early, very preliminary, and by the end of this month we'll have a lot more information that we'll be happy to share with those of you online as well as other members of the community moving forward. So this is just a little bit of a peek under the hood as to how where we are right now, and we'll continue to move that effort forward. In our next steps, again, based on our work plan, we want to present by the end of this month a definition of our study area. We are working on problem statements, which allows us to identify evaluation criteria to address those problems. and we will be completing our subcorridor identification. The key thing that we'll be doing once we've identified the subcorridors is really starting to define the problems and the opportunities within each subcorridor, develop that data that will allow us for comparison, and then be able to present that information after our evaluation for a decision-making in the November timeframe. And again, in September, we'll be rolling this effort out in the next couple of weeks, and we look forward to seeing your participation as we move forward. There's a number of other websites that's out there that talks, you can see we focused on the CCAG website, Project Connect. I really want to focus on that as well. And I think, John Michael, we do have the projectconnect.com website that is starting to come together right now.
Absolutely. So connectcentraltexas.com and projectconnect.com will get you to the same place.
Yep. So that's it. I appreciate your time, and I'll turn it back to John Michael for some concluding comments. I appreciate any questions that you may have. Be happy to respond.
Thank you so much, Kyle. So now you have an overview of what exactly we're trying to accomplish here with the Central Corridor study. We're done with the content of our presentation. One quick thing, since it came up, you can go to projectconnect.com on your own time. But if any of you have any questions or concerns, you can enter them in the little box now that should be on your screen, and we'll try to answer a few of them. But if you got all the information you need at this point, again, continue to check us out at projectconnect.com. You can follow us on Twitter at connect_syntax, or you can find us on Facebook and get information that way. If you have a question or concern that you come up with later, you can feel free to email us anytime at info@connectcentraltexas.com. I don't think we've received any questions yet. No, we haven't. Okay. Well, if there's no questions for us to address, we'll go ahead and end the webinar at this time. We are going to be we have been recording it. We're going to post it online for the benefit of other folks who aren't able to attend a future briefing. Thank you again for your participation, and we look forward to seeing you more as we get out there on the road to talk about the Central Corridor.